Welcome back everybody to another episode of Direct Comparison. In today's episode, we're taking a look at Iron Galaxy's newly released remakes for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, and see how they compare both visually and from a gameplay perspective to their original releases by Neversoft back in 2001 and 2002 respectively. For this comparison, all games are being played on the PC, with the graphics settings maxed at a native 4K resolution. To accomplish this, the original games have been modified slightly using various configuration file edits to allow for proper widescreen support, along with support for the DualSense controller. As for the new remake, I've opted to utilize NVIDIA's DLSS set to DLAA, as this offers the best possible image outside of just cranking up the super sampling. Though I will say, in terms of performance, this release does feel a little rough when playing with my RTX 4090, even with DLAA disabled and utilizing the standard TAA instead. So I do recommend if you buy this on PC to take advantage of DLSS in its quality mode for now, at least to help smooth out the performance. But again, for the sake of this particular video, I'll only be showing the game with DLAA enabled for the best image quality presentation. Alright, so let's kick this comparison off by first taking a look at some of our character models, starting with the Hawkman himself. As expected, the model design and complexity is far and beyond what was possible back in those original games, with higher poly counts, improved texture maps with higher res images, more sophisticated geometric complexity and hair cards, along with superior light interaction, on par with what you'd expect to see in modern games. The same is true of all the other skaters as well, with updated 3D models intended to capture their likeness, along with minor mocap animations for things like the skater selection screen. When compared to other games today, these models aren't necessarily amazing, and they still lack that level of realism and authenticity that you'd expect from a modern PS5 or Series X title. In fact, they pretty much look the same as the models used for Vicarious Vision's Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remakes, which of course were intended for the previous gen. So it's a bit disappointing to not see any notable improvements here. It's also disappointing to find that these new models don't feature any outfits that match the ones worn by their counterparts in the original games. Like Tony Hawk's white Quicksilver shirt and shorts here, or the short sleeve over long sleeve combo that he's sporting in Tony Hawk 4. You only get a few preset outfit choices per skater, and all the unlockable cosmetics are only available for the custom skaters instead. Though this probably has more to do with each skater's specific sponsor and licensing rights than anything else. Another big problem I have here are the animation designs. With the previous remakes, the animation design was still an improvement, with smoother transitions, rail balancing, manuals, grabs, and kick tricks, looking much better than those stiff animations on the original PlayStation. The same can't be said with this remake, however. While there's some aspects that are more sophisticated than those original renderware animations, there's still this really bouncy, unappealing feel to the skating in the remake that I can't shake. This is most noticeable when performing grinds, manuals, and lip transitions that see the character return to a default state before switching to another trick, as opposed to smoothly transitioning like before. Ollieing also has this weird clunkiness to it, where the skater kind of hits the ground and their body pops back up, instead of absorbing the impact relative to the height like before. And there's a few tricks that just look terrible now, like the Cannonball, Stiffy, and Japan Air, that don't have that same clean readability as their variants from the old games. The special manual trick, the spacewalk, looks especially bad. And what's more, it also doesn't work mechanically, as this was supposed to be the only manual move that helps to move the player forward. But now, let's move on from the skaters and talk about the skate parks themselves, as I feel these are the real stars of the show here. Like the skaters, the parks in Tony Hawk's 3 and 4 have seen a huge glow up. Every returning course has been lovingly recreated, matching the general spirit and style of the original, while also injecting a little bit of Iron Galaxy's own style into the experience. Take the opening Foundry for example. In essence, this course is identical to that original version, with all the same rails, ramps, and secrets exactly where you remember them being. But you'll also notice that the environment is far more visually complex than it was before, which can make it seem a bit overwhelming at first, with lots of contrast-heavy shadows, increased draw distances, particle effects, alpha layers, and added detail like debris on the ground, and additional inaccessible volumes, replacing otherwise barren walls. Meanwhile, Suburbia has had a slight retheme, as it now seems to embrace a new fall setting, with Halloween decorations on display on many of the houses. This not only gives it a unique style, but also plays nicely with the haunted mansion at the corner, and the one objective that involves smashing 5 pumpkins, as those pumpkins are now glowing jack-o'-lanterns that are much easier to spot. Skater Island seems to share the same philosophy as the old mall level from the previous remake, in that it's portrayed as having been abandoned and dilapidated, which is consistent with its real-world counterpart, as the ceiling of the real skate park in Rhode Island did actually collapse back in 2004. They even threw in a fun little Easter egg with the pirate ship outdoors, as you can now launch yourself off the front deck and into Bikini Bottom from SpongeBob, for reasons unknown. The biggest alteration, though, is unquestionably to the zoo from Tony Hawk 4. This level was never necessarily the best level to skate through, but it was a fun level to explore nonetheless, thanks to its many different animal obstacles and Easter eggs mixed in. Spooking the elephant here, for example, would trigger a stampede, opening up the aquarium across the way and allowing players to skate inside. Many other objectives also revolve around the animals at the zoo, requiring you to distract lions, skitch elephants, grind near some cockatoos, bet on rhino fights, and dodge monkey feces. The remake scraps all of that. Every animal has been removed, and the entire zoo has been retrofitted into an impromptu skate park instead. This means the aquarium has been closed off permanently, and the only remnant of Stompy the Elephant are a couple of objectives and posters spread out that reference him. The animals are also missing from other levels too, like San Francisco, where there were originally sea lions on this platform in the water, similar to the real-life pier. My guess is that this was done to avoid having to model out more animated creatures and focus resources in other areas, but it's a disappointing omission nonetheless. One of the more striking changes made to many of these courses are the updates that were made to the lighting. Thanks to the Unreal Engine, lighting across every one of these game courses is greatly improved, replacing the very flat, lifeless look of renderware with much more dynamic looking effects, including things like volumetric light, screen space reflections, high fidelity cube maps, and, in general, more sophisticated light map placement. It's still a static light design, so don't go in expecting any dynamic time of day or anything of that nature. But the added reflections, specularity, and volumetrics do a great job of making these environments pop, especially the airport and the rainy streets of London. Speaking of which, you'll notice a couple courses have had their static time of day changed completely, with parks like Rio and San Francisco now taking place in the late evening, giving it this nice orange glow. Airport, London, and the zoo were also originally set in broad daylight, but they're now set at night, which adds some nice variety to the course list, as most of those levels were originally set in broad daylight as well, despite their PlayStation 1 counterparts having been set at night due to technical limitations. Now, of course, those technical limitations are no longer the reason for the change this time around, as it appears Iron Galaxy simply wanted to mix up the game aesthetically, which I feel was the right call. Shadows are scaled up significantly as well, with far more baked-in shadows for environmental assets, contributing to a denser and more realistic looking game world. There's some nice real-time shadowing at play here too, allowing objects like flags, balloons, and other dynamic props to project shadows in real time, that previously didn't have any shadow renders at all. And character shadows are now properly projected relative to the global light position too, rather than the basic shadow render directly under the skater used before. Another big improvement you'll probably pick up on right away are those miscellaneous effects. Fire alphas, water surfaces, smoke volumes, and new spark effects all contribute to a really nice upgrade, enhancing all those destructive events seen throughout both games. I especially love the huge fireballs that emit from these gas tanks in the Foundry, along with the extra snow particles and rain in Canada and London, and the beautiful water textures implemented on these ramps in Los Angeles, as these really help to enhance otherwise dull-looking corners of each map. I'm not quite sure why the aforementioned rain effects in London are sectioned off in particular areas, as it looks really odd, if not broken. But I do at least like the way it impacts the characters' clothes and gives them this wet appearance temporarily when skating through it. Now, let's tackle the pink elephants in the room, or rather, the major missing features from the originals that are not in this new release. First off, there's the iconic soundtrack. There is a ton missing here. The original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 featured 55 songs between them, including tons of beloved classics like Alien Ant Farm's Wish, the Ramones' Blitzkrieg Bop, Zebrahead's Check, System of a Down's Shimmy, Goldfinger's Spokesman, and AC/DC's TNT. The remakes feature only 10 of those 55 songs, and every song I just mentioned, not included. You do get 96 Quite Bitter Being by CKY, Amoeba by Adolescence, and Del the Funky Homo Sapiens If You Must. But a vast majority of this playlist is made up of new tracks, some of which were reportedly handpicked by Tony Hawk himself, in hopes of introducing new music to fans of the series. While I respect the decision in this sense, I can't help but feel that a lot of the exclusions here likely had more to do with time and budgetary constraints, especially with some of the more expensive music licenses from the bigger artists. Though, at the end of the day, you can always just play a playlist in the background and mute the in-game soundtrack altogether, but it's still a bummer nonetheless, especially when you consider how much more consistent Vicarious Visions were when they recreated the soundtrack for Tony Hawk's 1 and 2. The next area where cuts were made is with the skater roster. Thankfully, nearly every major pro skater from those original games has been included, and yes, that does include fan favorite Bam Margera, who is now offered as an unlockable secret skater with a cheeky bio poking fun at how they almost shipped the game without him. The remake also features a huge amount of new skaters too, including some of those that were featured in the previous 1 and 2 remake. The real hit though comes with the beloved secret skaters, the less serious, unlockable skaters players strive to unlock by completing the game. In the original 3 and 4, these included some major cross-promotion characters to help advertise the then-new Star Wars films, including Darth Maul and Jango Fett. Understandably, these two don't return, and in their place, we do at least get the Doomslayer and the Revenant as a deluxe edition pre-order bonus, that are similar in their absurdity. Unsurprisingly, the remake also doesn't see the return of former adult film star Jenna Jameson, or Daisy either. Private Carrera from Tony Hawk 2 and 3 is also not making a return here for the same reason. But I was surprised to find Mike Vallely to also be missing here, despite being featured as an unlockable skater in the original Pro Skater 4 and many entries afterwards. In his place, the remake does feature Andy Anderson as a secret unlockable skater instead, along with two more silly choices as well. Next up, the missing parks. For the most part, all the main parks from the original Tony Hawk 3 and 4 are included, but there are a few exceptions. Chicago, for example, previously a course from Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX 2, doesn't make the cut, likely because of some sort of licensing issue with that particular series. But oddly, the old Redneck Carnival from Tony Hawk 4 is missing here too, and it's not really clear why. It's not a favorite of mine, as most of the goals in that course were a pain to complete, as were the goals in Chicago, honestly. But it's an odd exclusion nonetheless. In their place, however, we do get the excellent Water Park now, which is one of the better courses that I've played in a Tony Hawk game since probably Underground 2. The other newcomer, the movie studio, isn't quite as good, with some sloppy rail and quarter pipe placement, and no clean areas to perform vert tricks. But the bonus pinball secret level is a fun treat, and is a clever concept for a secret stage. With those courses that did return, there's a lot of that crude humor and inappropriate Easter eggs from the old games that have been cut from this latest version. The original games were relentlessly jokey with their environmental storytelling, using every square inch of space to make some sort of sex pun, drug reference, or other immature joke. This was a big part of the series, despite its obvious immature nature, and this latest remake seems to go above and beyond to sanitize it all. The airport level, for example, has a bunch of jokes poking fun at the TSA, from its full body cavity search warnings to its no bomb 2000 metal detectors. There's even goofy messages written on the tickers, like, "Sorry we lost your bags again," and "Noel owes me $5,000, the latter of which was a fun reference to one of the original game designers. Then you have Los Angeles, where the tense police chase objective with bank robbers has been modified, cutting out the criminals firing guns with an out-of-control autonomous car that simply shuts down after you drop a car on it. The cruise ship has been almost completely overhauled, removing all the low-poly bikini girls and replacing them with a bunch of event organizers and skaters. And the suggestive Cake Gap names seen here have had their names changed to reflect the new Red Bull inflatable in its place. It's hardly that big a deal, but skating through this entire game, you do get a sense that there's a lot less of an edgy feel and more of this kind of corporate-sponsored emptiness in its place. And as a result, it does feel like it's missing a big part of what made the series feel purposely dumb and punk in the first place. And this, on top of the removed blood effects that, like the previous remake, are replaced with this far less intense VHS rewind effect, contributes to this very shallow and dry experience overall. But easily, the biggest missing feature that has already generated quite a bit of concern from fans is the campaign mode from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. To put it bluntly, the remake of Tony Hawk 4 included in this package is not really a remake of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. They basically took all the levels from 4, threw in a 2-minute timer, and handpicked a few goals that they thought would work best with that timer. The result is a bit of a mixed bag. In some cases it does work well, as that original Tony Hawk 4 campaign isn't necessarily the best anyway. But there's some objectives that require a ton of annoying trial and error just to understand how they work. And because there's no objective markers in the world or even highlights for some key objects, it feels really annoying to try to figure these things out. This objective here, for example, where you need to scare some bullies off of the Sea Lion platforms in San Francisco, requires that you first scare birds off of a nearby pier sign, which only gives you a brief audio cue and no indicator of how many birds you need to scare. You then need to ride over a bag of birdseed, which you normally can't because of an NPC that blocks it. And then after you have the bag, you need to grind a rail high above the bullies, effectively driving all those birds to scare them off. All this has to be done within that 2 minutes by default, along with all the other goals that you're tasked with completing in this level. But the original goals in the first few Tony Hawk games were much more comprehensive and were designed so that you could technically complete them all in a single run. It's simply unrealistic to be able to pull off many of these new goals in a single run in the remade Tony Hawk 4 levels. And it feels like there's a general misunderstanding of how to place these objectives properly in order to get this to work. Because of the 2-minute timer, these Tony Hawk 4 levels are also missing a lot of the fun charm that they had before, like those little mini games, the unique objectives that set up temporary obstacles and ramps to trick off of, the ability to quickly restart certain combo lines, and most disappointing of all, the removal of all the epic pro goals that were arguably one of the most important aspects of that original game. For those that don't know, these goals highlighted the real-world stunts performed by the pro skaters in the game, and it doesn't appear to be featured this time around at all. There are unlockable pro goals, but they're more universal objectives that are generally simple things like getting a higher score or hitting a simple combo line. In all, there's a lot missing from this package that simply shouldn't be. The crude humor and missing adult movie stars I can understand, but the soundtrack, the carnival level, and the gameplay format of 4, along with its unique pro skater goals, Iron Galaxy should have found a way to include more of that content. Finally, let's wrap up with a brief sound comparison. Which version do you feel features the best sound quality and design?
Watch the sparks!
And that wraps up this episode of Direct Comparison. Overall, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 is a shell of its former self in this remake. It's still a joy to play through because of the fantastic gameplay design that Neversoft invented all those years ago. But this is hardly the quality that I would have expected after the fantastic Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remake a few years ago. Tony Hawk 3 is at least mostly intact, save for a few minor areas where things were purposely sanitized in favor of excessive product placement and advertising. But the actual mission goals, gameplay, and levels are all there, along with at least some of its soundtrack. Visually, it's just as incredible an upgrade as the previous collection, with some nice new effects, lighting, and much needed variety to help balance it all out. Though the updated graphics, larger skate roster, photo mode, and added levels do little to hide this remake's lack of inspiration. Either way, what do you guys think? Are you enjoying Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4? Or do you prefer the original games instead? And how confident are you in a remake of Tony Hawk's Underground games next? Let me know in the comment section. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content on this channel posted every week.